Hi there, this is the second part of a two-part video about my experiences in hotel quarantine in Australia. In the first video I gave you an overview of what it's been like for me and what you might expect if you are contemplating returning to Australia from overseas. So if some things in this video don't quite make sense and you want to know a little bit more about what it's really like and the day-in-a-day life of hotel quarantine experience, be sure to watch the first video, which I will link below. This video today will be more about the things I wish I had known before embarking on this journey, and also the things that I'm really glad that I was prepared for. I will also cover 3 major gripes that I've had so far. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. So let's get onto it. Before I tell you about what I wish I'd known and what I'm glad I prepared for, I just thought I would touch on my 3 major gripes so far. I do wish they had been more informative and just generally more transparent. I can compare them to the Emirates website. Once they started flying again on some routes, it was very easy to figure out which cities they were flying to, so you didn't get an error page there. Not so on the Qantas website, not at the time I was looking at it. But also I have to say that Qantas wasn't completely transparent. In the confirmation email they say nothing about quarantine. They don't say anything about not providing blankets or pillows on the flight. Qantas could have been clear on what to expect. They told us about limited food service, and they told us that there would be no in-flight entertainment. But blankets and pillows are something that most people expect. And my second major gripe is my Australian embassy in Lisbon experience. I called them when I was wondering if they had information about basically find my way back to Australia, get a flight back. The Portuguese government had closed borders, and that meant that there were no incoming flights from outside Europe. And even within Europe, there were not that many incoming flights or outgoing flights. So I would have to go to London first. I knew that when I rang them. They really weren't updated on the flight situation, and they were basically all booked out. The Qantas flights that were available in early May were already booked out, and no one knew when there was another flight from London. So this is why I rang the embassy, because surely if anyone knew, they would know. And also I knew that there wasn't that many Australians left in Portugal. They had all fled. This is late April, so I wasn't ringing them in the mayhem period where I'm pretty sure they would have been run off their feet. So the call was answered immediately, but they didn't have an updated information. They didn't know that I could not book a hotel in Heathrow for my connection flight the next day from Heathrow Airport. So they did tell me that they would send me an email if they found out anything new. They did actually send me an email about 3 days later, and the email was woefully limited in information, because again it stated the flights that were available, but none of those flights were suitable. In the Qantas case, they were not suitable because they were booked out. In the other flights case, they were actually not suitable because they would have transited through airports that at the time were in lockdown, and there was really an uncertainty whether you could even transit through those airports at all. So the Qatar flight, or was it the Japanese airline flight, I checked those, and one of those flights had a layover in Singapore. But Singapore, if you went on their website, you would be basically told that transit was not allowed if you were a foreign national through Singapore. So, and again, I was left with very limited information from the email I received from the embassy, and frankly I did expect more. And the third and last major gripe I have is about the website Skyscanner, which is a flight booking platform, and how it gives out really dangerously misleading information. Here I am looking at the flights that are available to Brisbane, and it says that you can leave Lisbon and basically get to Brisbane, and that wouldn't have been the case. So what that website is telling me is that on arrival in Sydney, I can book a forward flight to Brisbane, and that's absolutely not the case, because on arrival in Sydney, me as an international arrival and everyone else on that plane would have been placed in quarantine in a hotel much like this one. You will have to go into quarantine at the city of your arrival, so I would not have been able to get onto that Brisbane flight, and yet it was still allowing me to book it. Even now, going on to a similar flight booking website, there's still a lot of craziness going on. So if I put in a search for Melbourne to Brisbane flight, the search that comes up first is a 10 a.m. flight that arrives in Brisbane 31 hours and 20 minutes later. The next best, according to this website, is a flight that takes 49 hours and 15 minutes. So when I was trying to book my flight onwards to Brisbane from here, I had to ring the government services, who put me on to a travel agency, and they figured it out. And apparently now I'm flying with Virgin, who has a flight at 10 a.m. directly to Brisbane that takes about 2 hours and 10 minutes. And yet that particular flight didn't come up on the website. I wonder whether these websites are really suffering from being run by people in their kitchens or their spare bedroom and not having enough resources. So now is the time to tell you all about what I wish I had known and what maybe you'll want to prepare for. So I do wish I had known that there would be no cushion on a Qantas flight, and that I would suffer buttock pain in the bum for the next few days, because it was just such an uncomfortable flight. The flight crew told us to not move around the cabin because they want to limit contagion, obviously, and I understand that. They tell you not to move seats, so I would have taken something from Lisbon to make my flight a little bit more comfortable. And I'd also wished that I had brought a tea towel. So that's a bit of a strange wish, but the thing is that here they don't provide you with a tea towel, and you do have to wash the dishes that they provide for you. And so unless you use toilet paper to dry the dishes, because I'm not going to use a bath towel, there's nothing really to dry the dishes with. What I found is that I could easily leave them dry in the air, but still I have so many tea towels in Lisbon, I could have just brought one. So yeah, tea towel. I also wish I'd brought some body lotion, moisturizing lotion, because it's quite dry here in a hotel room. I even thought that the kind of body lotion that I would like to have would not be the kind that you can buy at the supermarket necessarily, but a more sort of extra type, because I'm sort of craving things that smell nice. And here there's nothing to smell apart from my own body and occasionally the food that comes in. There's very little to hear because it's a very quiet room, very well insulated. And I definitely wish that I had brought more comfortable underwear, more comfortable undies. I think you know what I mean. I just mean oversized cotton undies, because you'll be sitting all day. So yes, go out and buy some cotton tops or whatever they're called. And finally, I wish I had come with more notebooks, like paper notebooks, because I've seriously run out of paper. So I've been scribbling in everything I can find. Yes, I just wish that I had stocked up on notebooks. I do have my laptop and I write a lot on it, but occasionally you just need to quickly jot something down. So if you're a notebook type of person, make sure you have one that will last you at least 2 weeks. So now let's move on to the 19 things I'm glad I knew and that I prepared for. So I'm glad that I brought a project with me, so to speak, and the project is this very video. I knew that I'd want to create a video of my experience, and I brought that goal with me. So that has been really helpful because not only does it keep me quite busy in a way, but also it gives me a sense of purpose. So I don't know how many projects you could reasonably complete in quarantine. You couldn't do crafts or, home renovations, but things to do in a laptop or a notebook. You can write, you can start your memoir, you can finish your memoir, you can organize photos in your computer files or organize your files on your computer. Those things can be quite time consuming, and you might have been putting them off for a while, but if you set yourself a certain goal, it will actually make you feel quite good that you're ticking off at least one task during this period. The second thing that I'm glad I knew is related to that. I'm glad I have a laptop, and I'm glad I brought it with me on this trip because it's been a lifesaver, not only because I can watch YouTube, which lately I have been very interested in because I have decided, as you see, to become the world's oldest YouTuber. Generally, as you know, the kind of video that I am making, which is known as a vlog, a video log, is usually created on YouTube by very, very young people. So I'm really glad that I had a laptop to consult websites and to write emails and so on. And the third thing, and by the way, these 19 things that I'm glad I knew are not in any particular order. I just sort of jotted them down as you do. But I'm glad that I brought my precious stockings on this trip because of that infamous flight from London via Perth to Melbourne that lasted about 23 hours sitting, if you count with, waiting for the plane to take off and then waiting to come out of the plane. So if you're someone who doesn't have excellent blood circulation in your legs, I highly recommend that you do put on those very unflattering and very difficult to put on granny stockings or precious stockings. They will save you at least from pain in your legs. They might not save you from pain in your bum. They didn't me. The fourth thing I'm glad I remembered was to bring slippers. I guess I could have just worn socks, but it's good to have slippers because, I don't know, it just feels like there's an extra barrier between you and the hotel carpet. And the fifth thing that I'm glad about is that I brought along with me these tiny samples that I was given when in Lisbon they started opening the non-essential shops towards the end of my stay there. So one of the first non-essential shops that they opened was a place where they sold face skin creams, and I had run out, and so I went in and bought some, and then they gave me these little samples. I'm so glad I had them because they're like a major treat for me. After my shower, I will choose which one I'm going to put on so that I have something nice to smell. It's called Donna by Valentino, a floriental woody fragrance, not normally the kind of scent that I would go for because I like crisp scents, but they've been a treat. And the sixth thing I'm glad that I knew is that I would need comfortable pants. And these are the things that you've seen me wear every day, and that's because that's the only comfortable pants that I had available. And yes, they are meant for men because, as I said before, you basically will be lounging. She says, putting on her pants back again. So, seventh thing I'm glad that I knew. I'm glad that I prepared for the long flight by uploading movies onto my phone from Netflix. Netflix allows you to do that so that then later you can watch these movies. And I also had some Kindle books, and so I'm glad about that. Number 8 is snacks. I'm really glad that I sort of prepared for the Qantas flight by buying a packet of biscuits from the service station next to the hotel where I was staying overnight. The limited meals actually means limited meals. So it was a very tiny meal, the first meal, and then I thought I'm going to have to wait for about 10 hours for the next meal. And so I was really glad that I had these biscuits to nibble on. So yes, take some snacks for the flight. And just a quick mention before I move on, I'm really glad that I brought headphones on my flight as well, because that way I could listen to the movies on my phone. Otherwise it would have been extremely difficult. Oh, it's lunchtime. It looks like meatballs with mushrooms and potatoes. They didn't serve us a second breakfast today, so I think most people are actually quite hungry. And when I say second breakfast, I mean that second little snack they give us at about 8:30 or 9, which is usually a little kind of eggy thing. And the 9th thing that I'm glad that I knew was to bring Panadol. In long-haul flights, for me, I usually get a bit of a headache. I know that from experience, and I think it's because of mild dehydration, because it's just so difficult to carry water bottles with you, and then on a plane, they don't give you that much to drink, even in normal circumstances, and also because of the noise in the cabin. The engine noise of the plane is actually very powerful. I only noticed that when I first started putting on noise-cancelling headphones, and I realized then how loud the noise was. So I'm so glad that I carried Panadol, otherwise the flight would have been even more of an endurance. And the 10th thing I'm glad that I knew, or at least I'm glad that I predicted, was that I would really enjoy a street view. I didn't ask for a street view, but I did ask for a window that opened. That didn't turn out to be possible, but maybe because I asked for a window that opened, they put me in this room, which has a window that faces the street, and that's been very nice for me because I enjoy watching the world outside. We're up to number 11, dental floss. So I'm so glad that I brought it with me, because the thing about little things like that is that they do allow you to go online and shop at Coles or Woolworths, which are the supermarkets, but it's such a rigmarole to do any shopping online in these circumstances because of the whole quarantine and sanitization. And so having to go through all that rigmarole to just get a little tiny thing of dental floss, unless you can accumulate a long list of grocery items, I don't think anyone will actually bother themselves as well as everyone else to get a bag of groceries delivered to the room. The 11th thing that I'm glad I knew was to bring a plug adapter. This is a nifty little thing that I managed to buy in Lisbon. I knew that I would need it because of this plug for the camera charger. How would I charge the camera? And I knew that I would need that. So if you come from overseas with any different plugs, you will need one of these things. This is very handy because then you can actually... Can't seem to move it right now. Yeah, I need to actually recharge my battery, even as I speak of it. So the 13th thing I'm glad that I knew about and was prepared for was to exercise. I knew that I was going to feel better if I exercised, and I did that from the very first day. I've been able to keep up my walking routine, which is a minimum of 10,000 steps, and I jog a little bit, and when I'm just standing watching TV, I'll just jog in place. And what that has accomplished is that I will feel a little bit more physically tired at the end of the day, which will also make me sleep a little bit better, and that's extremely important when you're already battling jet lag. So the 14th thing that I'm glad I knew about is that I was prepared for jet lag to be bad. Even if I wasn't prepared to be in a room that doesn't really get much natural light during the day, which will exacerbate jet lag because your body is not triggered by sunlight into realizing that you're in a different time zone. But I was prepared to feel not very well in the first few days, and I was prepared to just basically be a couch potato, and that's what I did. I didn't get disappointed about not having any energy to do anything. You won't feel like yourself until a few days into the quarantine if you come from a very different time zone like I did. But then again, that's not a character flaw. It's just that it's going to be difficult for your body to adjust. And the 15th thing that I'm glad I knew about was, and it's also related to jet lag, is to just keep an eye out on what time of the day the sunlight streamed in and make sure that I would sit in that sunlight, again to trigger my body into realizing it's in a different time zone. The 16th thing that I'm glad about is that I packed some weird stuff into my luggage. One of those things is this bottle carrier, and I use this to transport bottles of wine if I actually buy any wine or port to take back to friends and family. I didn't use these to bring back any wine. I don't know if I would recommend drinking yourself silly in your room necessarily, but I'm so glad I brought it because I use it on my lap, in between my lap and my laptop. So that's a bit of a cushioning thing. So yes, random things in your suitcase might come in handy. And the 17th thing that I'm glad about is that I somehow guessed that I would need the second towel that we are allotted. So they give us 2 bath towels for each week, and I kept the second bath towel dry and clean, and I've been using that to wrap around the bed pillow so that I can use it as an armchair cushion. And also I've been using that bath towel to do stretches while I'm watching TV. So the 18th thing I'm glad about, and that relates to the very first thing I said, which was I'm glad that I brought a project. It relates to that because that project, which is creating this video, is in essence a social history document. So one day someone, apart from my future grandchildren, will be able to see what it was like from a very personal point of view, admittedly, and not everyone will have this exact experience, even if they stay in this exact hotel. But it's still going to be very interesting for people to be able to see what it was like to stay in a hotel like this during quarantine. I predicted that I would want to feel purposeful, and I'm glad that the project that I brought along with me related to that, to social history. And the 19th thing I'm glad about is that I was prepared that this period was going to be a little bit challenging, so I was determined for it to be interesting, not just challenging. I was determined to also not ever forget that I'm actually in a privileged position where I am being well taken care of. So I was determined to make the best of it, whatever it was going to be. So I'm glad about that. And in the end, so far, it's been fine, really. And also, sometimes I look out on the street and occasionally I've seen a homeless man walk past, and that homeless man always checks the rubbish bins out there, I suppose, to see if there is any food. And so I don't want to lose perspective. I'm well fed, I've got a comfortable bed, I've got medical assistance if I ever need it. And sure, this is going to be difficult for a lot of us who are a little bit more claustrophobic, or those of us who do not like at all to be on their own. But in the end, I actually feel that it's for the greater good. I'm not sure how long they'll be able to mandate that every overseas arrival needs to be in quarantine for 2 weeks. Is it going to be until they find a vaccine, which can be in a year or longer? So I don't know how sustainable this is. But at the moment, when there are still so many active cases of coronavirus in the entire world, I think Australia is doing the right thing in protecting itself. I'm just a little bit worried about how sustainable that is. But we'll see how it plays out. I think we're in the eye of the storm now. So I wish you all the best on your return journey to Australia if you're in that position. And just know that it wasn't that bad in my case. All the best and take care. Bye-bye.